Harry's Wife, Part 101.13.1. Windsor Walkabout. The Arrival. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, there was attendance at Windsor by the Prince and Princess of Wales, Prince Harry and Harry's wife. The first time that the four of them had been in each other's close proximity for some time indeed. There was a live stream, live coverage of their attendance at Windsor, moving from the private section of the estate into the public area to look at the floral tributes that had been laid to the deceased Queen, and also then the walkabout, meeting members of the public, the mourners that had gathered to pay their respects. This provides us with a useful opportunity to understand more about the dynamic involving Harry's wife and other members of the royal family. And I've already dealt with the issue of Harry's wife's behaviour concerning the flowers. This video touches just upon their arrival and a minute or so worth of footage, which is indicative of certain aspects of the narcissistic dynamic which are worth sharing with you. Before I get into the body of that, it's worth dipping into what the Mail Online had to state, where it explained that Harry's wife and Harry delayed Fab 4 Windsor Walkabout with William and Kate because they had to change into formal morning dress to meet well-wishers, claims NBC News royal commentator. Prince Harry and Harry's wife's royal walkabout with Prince William and Kate was delayed by nearly an hour because the Sussexes had to get changed into formal morning attire, a royal expert claimed on US TV. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex had to quickly go and get changed to meet mourners with the Prince and Princess of Wales outside Windsor Castle on Saturday afternoon, according to NBC's Daisy McAndrew. The NBC News royal commentator told the network's Today Show that she believed Harry's wife needed to have her hair and makeup done, and that the walkabout had been scheduled to be nearly an hour before they came. William and Harry have a well-documented troubled relationship, but the death of their grandmother last Thursday saw the rivals shelve their differences when, with their wives, they viewed floral tributes left to the late Queen. As I've explained in parts passim in relation to the Prince of Wales versus Harry's wife, there isn't a shelving of the differences, but rather it was done for different reasons explained in that video. The Mail states the new heir to the throne is understood to have invited his brother Harry in a text message to join them in meeting well-wishers outside the castle, which sources said William thought was an important show of unity. Ms. McAndrew said, interestingly, the reason that the walkabout was so late, it was scheduled to be nearly an hour before they actually came, was because, of course, Harry and Harry's wife had to go and get changed. They weren't wearing the proper formal morning attire, so they had to quickly go and get changed. I guess do hair and makeup for Harry's wife, so that's why they were late. The claim comes after the Daily Mail's Richard Kay reported that the walkabout had originally been planned for 4:30 p.m, but was delayed by 45 minutes as the brothers communicated with one another. Ms. McAndrew also claimed that the meeting was very much the King's desire, because Charles III wanted to see the boys together, because of course it was overshadowing the beginning of his reign. But the Daily Mail reported today that the walkabout was not carried out on the direction of Charles, with one royal source saying such suggestions were absolutely not the case. Accordingly, some of the backdrop to what was going on in respect of it being delayed. We don't know the reasons why Harry and his wife were not suitably attired. Quite possibly they didn't believe that they would be seen by the public that day, and there is nothing in it other than that. But it does demonstrate that the two groups were pulled together, and we're now going to see how the dynamic between them all panned out in the early stages of their arrival. Here comes the footage.
coming out to meet the public who are here. A family together. The Prince of Wales has only recently issued his statement saying that he will do whatever he can to fully support the new king. Coming down from Windsor Castle, the great George IV gate behind them, and framing their departure now from the private area and coming into the public part of the park, where the Long Walk has often had many royal occasions, not least more recently when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were married, coming out to look at the enormous number of floral tributes laid here for the Queen, who spent most of the latter months of her life here at Windsor Castle. She was here throughout COVID. It was here that the Duke of Edinburgh died, and it was a very special place for the Queen and Prince Philip, probably their principal home. And for their two grandsons to be here with their wives, looking at those floral trees.
You've seen on arrival that the Princess of Wales is on the far side, away from Harry's wife. And the Princess of Wales does not even look at Harry's wife. We know that Kate is an empathic individual, that she functions with considerable emotional empathy for other people. That's been demonstrated by her behaviours over and over again. However, in these circumstances, her emotional empathy for Harry's wife has been reduced as a consequence of Harry's wife's behaviour, not only towards the Princess of Wales, but also other members of the royal family. And quite simply, as she's been suitably advised, she is having as little as possible to do with her. In this instance, people would call this what's known as grey rock. It's far more effective to have nothing at all to do with the narcissist, because the problem with grey rock is this. You invariably end up giving fuel to us. You do, because you will sometimes look at us. Your body language will convey something. So even if you're not speaking, look in your eyes, your facial expression, your body language will convey some form of fuel to us, and thus we gain something. Furthermore, you're in proximity to a narcissist, which could, of course, lead to adverse consequences for you, and where you're an empath with an addiction, it will increase your emotional thinking. So the better course of action, of course, is to have nothing to do with the narcissist whatsoever, i.e. not be there. If you want to understand more about why grey rock doesn't work, then watch my video of that name. The Princess of Wales, of course, it was necessary for her to be in attendance, but suitably advised, she opted to have nothing really to do with Harry's wife. Didn't speak to her, didn't look at her, and that will, of course, have wounded Harry's wife. Prince William doesn't engage with Harry's wife either, although he doesn't have a convenient scarf on this occasion to play with. He engages with his brother briefly, but says nothing to Harry's wife. You can see the effect this has on Harry's wife. She looks furtive. There are anxious glances. She keeps trying to catch the gaze of both Prince William and Princess Kate. She's attempting to get their attention, effectively hoover them, by gaining a reaction from them for the purposes of enabling her unconscious narcissism to know that they're under control and, of course, to draw fuel from them as non-intimate secondary sources in the fuel matrix. The problem is that as she's being wounded and she's not receiving fuel from them, she's receiving a double whammy. Her fuel levels are dropping, and the wounding occasioned by the pair of them not engaging with her is punching holes below the waterline, so to speak, so that she's losing yet more fuel. This is making her feel anxious, edgy, uncertain, and that's why we see the furtive looks, the rabbit in the headlights that some people have described. It's because her fuel levels are plummeting and she's not able to gain control. Her narcissism is not directing her to reach over and try and shake hands or touch them. She would be rebuffed, and the narcissism recognizes that, therefore, as a self-defense mechanism, does not take her to that point. However, it does attempt subtly to hoover them by trying to catch their gaze, and she fails, and therefore the wounding keeps occurring. This means, of course, unsurprisingly, the grip of doom is in attendance, and she clings on to Harry for dear life. Him holding her hand means that he's providing her with fuel, proximate fuel, from his position as the intimate partner primary source, and this starts to offset the wounding that she's experiencing from the Prince and Princess of Wales. But it doesn't mean that she's in a glorious position at all. Her anxiety shows in terms of the furtive look, the nervous look on her face, and the fact that she keeps playing with her hair. That anxiety is as a consequence of the threat to control that she's subconsciously experiencing. Throughout, as you've seen in the footage, as they walk around the gate towards where the flowers are, the Princess of Wales still does not look at her, continuing to wound. Prince Harry gives a brief acknowledgement to the crowd, and Prince and Princess of Wales move off to the right. Moving apart from them would also wound Harry's wife. She hasn't got control of them. Inside, her narcissism, if it had a voice, would be screaming, "Get control of them! Get control of them!" The problem that she's got is she can't assert control over them directly. Her narcissism won't allow her to go up and link arms with them and say, "Hey, let's do the can-can." She's tried directly in a subtle version by trying to get their gaze, failed. She's not even in a position to be able to mutter something to Prince Harry to gain indirect assertion of control, because Harry will probably rebut her by saying, "This isn't the time, this isn't the time." And therefore, all she can do is stay in a position of withdrawal and think to herself, how mean they're being to me, poor me. The problem is, that isn't satisfactory, because the moment she does that, she does gain control in that precise moment, but then they're not dealing with her in the next moment. She's wounded again and again and again. So rather than break the pattern of wounding through either directly asserting control over the Prince and Princess of Wales, or through an indirect assertion of control through Prince Harry, she's reliant on the fuel from Prince Harry, and her narcissism is in each and every separate moment having to remind her, they're being mean to you, they're being mean to you. So she gets wounded, asserts control by forming the view that they're mean. She's wounded, threat to control, they're mean, asserts control. Wounded, threat to control, they're mean, assert control. Again and again and again. And this is hugely unsettling for her. Along with the decreased fuel levels, this is why you're seeing the level of anxiety, uncertainty that she's exhibiting. I understand that later in the footage, she curtsies to an aide. And people have commented, doesn't she know the protocol? What's happening there is she's somewhat discombobulated by what's been going on. That is the sort of misfiring response that occurs. So this early snippet, just at the very beginning of what is 42 minutes worth of material, I'm not going to take you through all of it, we'll be here all day, but this initial part is absolutely fascinating for you to see not only the responses of the Prince and Princess of Wales to effectively ignoring Harry's wife, but also the impact it has upon her, but more importantly, why it has that impact, something you will not get from any other source. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.